מצה על שום שנגאלו אבותינו במצרים, מרור על שום שמררו המצרים את חיי אבותינו במצרים. So we need to explain these three things. Now, so what's the answers that the Mishnah gives? Why do we eat matzah in Pesach? Because our forefathers were redeemed. The problem is that we have here something missing. What do we have missing? If you notice, we've explained here three things. Pesach. Why do we have Pesach? Mishum shepasach, right? God passed over, and therefore we eat the korban of the Passover, right? Maror is because shemireru et chayei avotenu mitzrayim. Maror mireru, right? And bitter with the bitter herbs. What about matzah? Matzah, we're told, matzah al shum shenigalu. What are we missing here? What is so blatantly missing here? We're missing here the play on words, right? Where did it go? Where's our play on words? We had Pesach Pasach, Maror Mireru, Matzah, We're missing here something. We're missing here our play on words. Where's the explanation? Also, it doesn't tell us anything. Matzah Shum Shenigalu. What does that mean? Okay. Where's our linguistic connection? Okay, thank you, Deborah. So let's go back to the psukim and look for a linguistic connection. Let's look for our play on words. So we're going back to the original psukim where God told us to, right? God also explained. Now, that's one of the good things about being a teacher. You can emphasize what you want, leave out what you don't want, and then it comes as a surprise later on, right? Okay, so let's read again the psukim. Shiv'at yamim matzot ochelu, you eat the matzah 7 days. Ach bayom harishon tashbitu seor mibatechem, ki kol ochel chametz v'nichreta nefesh ha'im Yisrael miyom harishon et yom hashvi. Okay, so if you eat the chametz, then you're cut off of Israel. וביום הראשון מקרא קודש, וביום השביעי מקרא קודש יהיה לכם, כל מלאכה לא יעשה בהם, אך אשר יאכל לכל נפש, הוא לבדו יעשה לכם. Okay, you have Yom Tov on the first day and the last day, don't do any melacha. And here we have again, Pasuk Yud saying, ושמרתם את המצות. כי, notice we have a key, because, כי בעצם היום הזה הוצאתי את צבאותיכם מארץ מצרים. On this day you shall observe the feast of the unleavened bread, for on this day I brought your ranks out of the land of Egypt. Now, how does this explain? So I want to say there's a linguistic connection. There's a play on words. What's our play on words here? Why do we eat matzah? Matzah is supposed to remind us of
Hotzeti.
Hotzeti, right? Now, what's funny? We have this play on words that we use on Leila Seder without even noticing it, right? Where do we have it? Motzi matzah, kadesh urchat, karpas, yachatz, magid, lachza, motzi matzah. We use this linguistic connection without even noticing that we're using it. Okay? We're trying to connect between motzi and matzah, between ushmartem et hamatzot. Now, I'd like to give a little bit more basis to this claim. And the first thing I want us to notice is something interesting. I want to go to Targum Unklus and see how he translates the word matzah. How does he call a matzah? Okay, so let's see. Okay, the Targum says, "An shiv'at yamim matzot ochelu, shiv'a yomin," that's 7 days, pteira techlu. So you should eat something called pteira. Where did he get this word from? Or what does this word mean? So I looked for this word in Unklus elsewhere, and I found it in a very surprising place. You find it in many places, but I'll give you one example of the place where I found it, which is pretty surprising. And that's a Pasuk in Dvarim, telling us about what happens when a man gets married and he doesn't like his wife. Ki kach ishisha uve'ala. Okay, a man takes his wife and possesses her or has whatever. Don't know if I like the translation. V'haya im lo timtza chen be'inav ki matzav ha'irvad davar. So she fails to please him. He finds something obnoxious or something wrong about her. V'chatav la sefer kritut v'natan beyadav v'shilcha mibeito. So he writes her a bill of divorcement, hands it to her, and sends her away from his house. Pasuk and Dvarim having to do with divorce. How does Unklus translate this? ויכתוב לה גט פיטורין. Okay, the bill of divorcement, כריתות, is called פיטורין. וייתן בידה, he needs to give it in her hand. ויפטרנה מביתה, and he sends her away from his house. So you notice the root, hey, tet, resh, is the same root for the matzah, and the same root for divorce, sending away, etc. We also use this word nowadays, modern day Hebrew, when you want to fire somebody. You lefater oto, you fire him, you send him away. Okay, so here we have the linguistic connection. We have the matzah in the middle coming together with yetziah. In the Aramaic translation, it's called ptira, which is also the translation for shiluach, or what we call today gerushin, divorce. So the matzah, if we want to be positive and talk in nice words, we'll say matzah is the word of leaving. Okay, I don't know if we really want to go there, but we can go to the unleavened bread and the leaving bread. Okay, if you really want to take it and also to play on words in English. Okay, but we have the matzah is the bread of the yetziah. It's supposed to remind us of the leaving of Egypt. Now, problem is that's not what Rabban Gamliel said, right? Okay, let's go back to Rabban Gamliel. What did Rabban Gamliel say? He said, matzah al shum shenigalu avotenu b'mitzrayim. Right? So he's not exactly doing what I want him to do, which is great, because then it would be obvious and then I wouldn't have anything to talk about in my shir. But we still have a question, how do we connect the matzahs and nigalu together with what we were just talking about? And for that, second, someone here is trying to shut me here. Okay, so Deborah is saying it's separation from slavery. It's not only separation from slavery, it's also separation from Egypt. We're going away. We're going out of Egypt. But I want us to notice that I cut off only one part of the Mishnah, and the Mishnah goes a bit further. Bechol dor vador, חייב אדם לראות את עצמו כאילו הוא יצא ממצרים, שנאמר, והגעת לבנך ביום ההוא לאמור, בעבור זה עשה השם לי בצאתי ממצרים. So even though when Rabban Gamliel is explaining Pesach, al shum shepasach, and Moror, al shum shemireru, and Matzah, he said, al shum shenigalu, but right afterwards, we're talking about the idea of feeling ourselves coming out of Egypt. And therefore, our Matzah is Ke'ilu hu yetza mimitzrayim. Now, what I want us to do now is to notice that there's something very nice about this Pesach matzah and more. Let's try to sum this up, okay? So what do we have here? We have here three components of the Seder, which we can organize in a certain chronological order. And it's not only a chronological order, but it's also a good summary of what we're trying to achieve throughout the evening. What do I mean? Maror is the way to commemorate or to remember our bitter past. Pesach resembles a miraculous present. When I mean the miraculous present, I mean that Pesach is we're remembering when God passed over the Israelites' houses in order to kill off the Egyptians, in order for us to be redeemed. Right? This is the miraculous part of okay, this is a miraculous part of the the evening, of the whole process. Okay. Okay, Navid is saying the matzah was a hey, whereas yatzah was an aleph, and it's a totally different church. But I also think that Tanakh itself doesn't always work with that, as Nikki says. It play on words we have in Tanakh all the time, not even, some of them even very, very weird. Okay, so back to our bitter past. Pesach is the miracle, the night of the miracles, the night of redemption, our miraculous present. And the matzah represents our future, the redeeming future. Okay, so we have a past, we have a present, and we have the future. Now we can think of what's actually happening on Leila Seder. What are we doing on Leila Seder? We have here a very didactic way of summarizing up the story of the evening. Why do we have a didactic way? Because we do so many things in this evening that's really very educational, right? We start off with piquing the curiosity of your children. Part of the piquing of the curiosity is through the food and through our minhagim and through all the different things that we do at night. Now's the time to tell a story that I really like, but it doesn't work in Corona times, so you'll forgive me. But there's a story about a father who says to himself that he wants his son to ask real questions on Leila Seder, right? The problem is, by the time we get to Leila Seder, the kids already know everything. Even those who are really young, they go to Gan, they do make-believe Seder. They're taught by heart how to sing the Manishtana. They get to Leila Seder, nothing surprising anymore, right? So there's a story about a father who decides that he's not going to send his kid to Gan from to kindergarten from Purim. As I said, it's a joke that works not Corona times because who's been sending their kids to preschool, okay? But he doesn't send his kid to Gan from Purim in order for the kid to get to Leila Seder and look at everything and say, wow, this is different. Why is this night different from every night? And they get to Leila Seder, and the father is doing all these interesting things, right? He has three matzahs, and he has his karpas, and he has his charoset, and he has whatever, and he keeps on doing so many cups of wine, and he's expecting the child to ask the questions. And the child doesn't say anything, and he doesn't say anything, he doesn't say anything. At a certain point, the mother, elbows the kid and says, did you notice that Abba's acting a little bit strange this evening? And the kid turns to his mother and says, Mommy, Daddy's been acting strange since Purim. Okay, so again, in Corona times, everybody's been acting strange, and actually this Purim was even stranger than usual because it was Erev Shabbos. But why am I telling this story? Because one of the things that we do on Leila Seder is try to pique the curiosity. We try to get them to ask questions. But after they ask the questions, we try to give answers, and we give answers through a play on words. But not only do we have these linguistic connections and play on words, we have a catchy summary. We're summarizing up the whole evening. Matchil begnut, right? The maror is our gnut, is our bad point. Mesayem b'shevach, the matzah is where we're leading up to. And we go through another station on the way, which is a Pesach. And then we get to eat the exhibits, right? After we explain everything, you also get to eat it, which is even best, okay? We have a hands-on experience. One of you wrote in your comments before that we get to really internalize the ideas, okay? So what better way to internalize the idea of leaving Egypt, but by eating? You are what you eat. So this night, you are what you eat, and we're eating. We're remembering the bitter past. We're remembering the miraculous present and the redeeming future. Now, before I touch on a few points that we haven't touched yet in terms of matzah, because this isn't 100% clear cut, I want to share with you something that we do on every once in a while at Seder. Again, you try not to do things too often because you want it to be novelty and different every different time. Okay, but one of the things that we do is takes this idea of the Torah and of Chazal, of summarizing up the whole evening, and try to really do the same thing with the Haggadah. How do we do that? Well, what you could do, or what we do, is we prepare from before, okay? We believe that when you prepare for Leila Seder, it's not only by cooking and not only by cleaning, but it's also, and not only by learning, but actually preparing things to do. So we take a board, a big piece of paper, and we put on it a picture of the maror, a picture of the Pesach, a picture of the matzah. We add to it paper clips, a few, and then each part of the Haggadah that you get to, you ask the children. If you have a lot of children, then you can, I print out pictures that go with each part of the Haggadah. And each time you can give it to a different child to do. Okay, it depends if you're a Seder with children or Seder with adults. Even with adults, I think it's a good exercise, even if you don't do the actual part of printing things out and hanging it up. But every part of the Haggadah, you stop and you say, tell me, is this part of our maror? Is this part of the Pesach? Or is this part of the matzah? Okay, for example, you start off the Haggadah and you say, Avadim hayinu leparo b'Mitzrayim. So what does Avadim Hayinu Leparo B'Mitzrayim, which part is it? Where does it go? It goes with our maror. So you have a printout, a picture of Avadim Hayinu Leparo B'Mitzrayim, and you give it to a child, and the child goes and puts it up on the board and says, okay, this is part of our bitter past. Okay, and then you go, Bitchila uvdei avodah zara hayu avotenu. Okay, I can have a picture for that one too. Ve'ata kirvanu hamakom le'avodato. So where do we put ve'ata kirvanu hamakom le'avodato? Where does that go? So sometimes it's a little bit tricky if we're in the Pesach or in the Matzah, but I put it in the Matzah, in the redeeming future. This is where we're going towards. That's our focus of the future. These are our dreams of our redeeming future. So that goes with the Matzah. And then when we have this whole long discussion, which mathematicians maybe like, but lots of other people don't really enjoy. How many makot did they get on the sea? Right? If they had 10 in Egypt, then it was times 5 on the sea. So this was etzban, this was yad. So how much was on the sea? All those questions of how many makot exactly did they get on the sea? But at a certain point, you stop and you say, okay, so what part of the Haggadah does this have to do? Which part is this? Okay, so Debbie writes matzah. I don't think this is matzah because all the part of the miraculous present of leaving of the miracles that help us in the transition between the bitter past and the redeeming future, all the miracles in the middle, that goes together with our matzah. Not in our matzah, with our Pesach. Okay, so that now I just gave you 3 examples here of Avadim Hayinu, Kirvanu Makom Le'avodato, and Kriat Yam Suf, but this is a very good exercise to remember what's the framework of the whole evening, where we came from, where we're going to, and how God intervened to help us get there. And on the night of the Seder, the Pesach is our present. The Pesach, the miracles, that's what we're supposed to be remembering on the night of the Seder, as if it's happening right now. Okay, so now, but we still have a certain dilemma, okay? What's our dilemma? We have still another problem because, or a little twist in our story, because we actually have numerous reasons for the matzah, as you have told us in the beginning, right? We talked about matzah as being lechem oni. We also talked about the dough not rising. We also talked about having matzah in the first Seder. And all these questions are questions that you've raised before. So how do we explain all these different reasons, right? I had a great idea up till now. Matzah is rishum sheyatzu b'chol dor vador chayav adam lirot et atzmo kilu yatsa mimitzrayim. But I'm kind of ignoring that the Torah gave us a few reasons. And I'm not even talking about the reasons that the Chassidut give us about the idea of humility and Yetzer Hara and all those things. Okay, I don't want to even talk about those. I'm just even talking about Pshat Tanakh. We have a whole bunch of reasons. So we need to go back and see how that all works together, right? So we already said, as someone already mentioned here, we had matzah in the first Seder, but we also had maror in the first Seder. Or is whoever was it said, I apologize, I don't remember names. We already did a Leila Seder in Egypt, which already combined also the past and the present and the future and everything all together. So how does that fit in with the matzah? How does it fit in with now we're commemorating, but we already commemorated before we even did it? Okay, that's on one hand. But also we mentioned the fact that talking about the dough not rising as being something pretty ironic. Okay. So now what I want us to notice is that first of all, matzah as lechem oni is very similar to maror, right? Because what is lechem oni? Lechem oni reminds us of the poverty and the hardships and the distress and everything that was hard in Egypt, right? Why is matzah lechem oni? Someone also mentions this in the comments, because lives don't have time to sit around waiting for their dough to rise. You're hungry, you don't have time, you mix some water and flour together, you put it on the fire, and you go and you eat it, and you get back to work. So matzah is also lechamoni, and it's also very much like the maror, where they embittered our lives in Pesach, right? So that's one interesting point. But let's get back to the donut rising and the matzah in the first seder. How do we figure that out? How do we deal with that? So I'm going to bring the Ramban. Ramban says something very interesting. Okay, Ramban, I think when I found this Ramban for the first time, it was mind-blowing for me. So Ramban says this, Vetam vayofu et habatzik. Right, the pasuk that tells us that they baked the dough into unleavened bread. The Ramban says this, she'afu oto matzot. They made it into matzah, into unleavened bread. Mipnei hamitzvah shenitztavu seor lo yimatzeh bevatechem ki kol ochel machmetzet v'nichreta. Okay, meaning, you know why they made unleavened bread? Because they were commanded not to have any leaven in their house. Because anyone eating what is leavened will be cut off. The Amal ki gurshu mimitzrayim, and it told us, you know why they baked it on the way? Because they were driven out of Egypt. Amal ki gurshu mimitzrayim l'mal shafru oto baderech. Okay, now why is this mind-blowing? Because it turns everything around. It's not that we eat matzah because they didn't have time to make leavened bread. It's they didn't make leavened bread because God told us to eat matzah. The reason they didn't make matzah and their dough didn't rise was because God told them that they can't have leavened bread in their house. It's not that we need to turn the whole story upside down. The only thing that the story tells us is why they baked it on the way, because they didn't have time. But they would have baked it into matzah anyway, because they weren't allowed to have leavened bread. I'll just say, just in, little parentheses, I'll just say that we can understand from here that the 18 minutes idea isn't exactly 100%, because if they carried their bread that was unleavened out of Egypt and only baked it on the way, I have a feeling 18 minutes passed. Okay, so it didn't have in it the things that make dough rise. But that's beside the point. That's just Tanakh, not halacha, so don't listen. Okay, so now back to our story. So the Ramban says that the dough not rising, okay, the first is because of the second, is because we had matzah in the first seder. That's the reason why the dough wasn't rising. So now we need to go back and ask the question again, why did we have matzah in the first seder? Now, you could answer, and you'll be absolutely right. Just like we had maror in the first seder, we had maror, matzah, and Pesach in the first seder because we had the package deal. Even though we didn't go out yet, we're already commemorating something that didn't happen. That's definitely an option, and that's a fine option. I want to give a Nazir idea. In order to give a Nazir idea, I would like to look for another context where we find chametz and matzah. So what's another context where we find chametz and matzah? Oh, wait, before that. Your question is, why weren't they allowed to have chametz in Egypt? And why did they need to eat matzah? And we're going to another context of chametz and matzah. So what is our context? Psukim in Vayikra. Okay? Now what's great about bringing Psukim in Vayikra? People don't remember Vayikra. So any pasuk you bring is going to be a new pasuk, right? Because who was, but by the way, it's a parsha. So good idea to listen. You can say we also learned parsha this week. Okay, so what is a pasuk? When you bring a mincha, okay, a meal offering in the translation, when you bring a mincha, which is made out of grain, a grain offering, meal offering, it cannot be chametz. You cannot bring leaven or honey to be turned into ishe or smoke or a sacrifice, an offering to God. You can bring it as an offering of choice products or of first products. Okay, we bring dvash, we bring fruit as bikurim, and we also bring shtei halechem, which is leavened bread offering on on Shavuot, but you can't bring it to the Mizbeach itself. Even when you want to bring Shtei Alechem, they're not actually sacrificed on the altar. Okay, that's source number one. What's the next source that I want to bring? Okay, chametz, besides the fact that chametz doesn't go with the Mizbeach, the next source that we have is in Vayikra Perek Zayin, that's already the next parsha, talks about Korban Shlamim, which is we call it peace offering. And we have a certain kind of peace offering called a toda, a thanksgiving. If someone wants to bring the sacrifice of well-being or sacrifice of shlamim, if he brings it as a thanksgiving, he needs to bring together with it chalot matzot, blulot b'shemen, ורקיקי מצות, משוחים בשמן, וסולת מורבכת, חלות, בלולות בשמן. So it's 3 different kinds of matzahs that you bring. Al chalot lechem chametz yakriv korbano. He brings it together also with leavened bread, with actually chametz bread. So when somebody wants to bring a korban todah, he wants to thank God for something that God did for him, for a miracle that God granted him. He brings an animal, and together with the animal, he brings lots of types of bread. He brings lots of types of matzah and one type of chametz, and he eats all this as a big feast together. We already know from the previous source that you don't bring the chametz to the mizbeach. All of this you eat together, but not on the mizbeach. One of the explanations is that you bring a very, very, very big offering. You also need to eat it all in one day. You can't wait for the next day to finish eating it. And then you have to invite a lot of people to come and eat together with you. And then they ask you, so why are you bringing this korban? Why do you have so much? And then you start telling them of your story and your miracle. And that's how you do pirsumini. So you help other people take part in your celebration. So we know of one kind of korban that is accompanied by grain, okay, by our carbohydrates. My son, when I used to ask him what he wants to take to school, what kind of food, so he would tell me, Ima, for my mizonot, I want this, and for my shehako, I want that. Okay, so we have here a korban that has a shehako, we have our bread, and we also have our meat, and we also have not our mizanot, we have our amotzi, we have our chametz, we have our matzah, we have everything together. Leila Seder, we have it special. We also have our vegetables to make it a very wholesome meal. So after we've said that with our korban that combines an animal sacrifice with bread is a korban todah that includes both chametz and matzah. Now we need to come back to our question and ask, why is this night different from all the nights where we don't eat chametz and matzah, we eat only matzah? And here we need to first of all remind us, what is the purpose of this evening? What is the purpose of this evening? Another, we go back to the Mishnah. After we said, B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim, right? Every generation we need to see as if we left Egypt. V'igata lebincha b'yom hahu le'emor b'avur ze asa Hashem li b'tzeiti mimitzrayim. You need to say that God did this to me, right? Lefichach. After we've explained everything, so we tell our children on Leila Seder, the Mishnah tells us, Lefichach, therefore, אנחנו חייבים להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, להדר, לברך, להלל ולקלס, למי שעשה לאבותינו ולנו את כל הניסים האלו. הוציאנו מעבדות לחירות, מעגון לשמחה, מאבל ליום טוב, מאפלה לאור גדול, משעבוד לגאולה, ונאמר לפניו הללויה. So what is the purpose of this evening? This is an evening of thanksgiving. If you ask yourself, why do we celebrate Leila Seder? If you go out and you do a survey, why do we celebrate Leila Seder? Most people would say to tell the story of leaving Egypt. But really the purpose of Leila Seder is to thank God for leaving Egypt, for taking us out of Egypt. Lefichach, the whole story takes us to the Hallel, takes us to the 4 cups of wine, which we use in order to praise God. Each cup comes together with a bracha to praise God. So the whole point of the evening is to thank God right? And it's like they opened up the thesaurus and poured out all the words that they know about saying thank you. Right? We have all the words that we have here because the purpose of the evening is to give todah, like the korban todah. So now if we go back and say that our korban Pesach is like a korban todah, right? So then we get to the problem. What's our problem with korban todah? Well, we need to first ask, where was korban Pesach sacrificed? The original korban Pesach, the one in Egypt. Where did they sacrifice it? Where was the altar? Was there an altar? Where exactly, when we say that you need to bring a korban, and the korban and the chametz can't be on the altar, and you go back to Pesach in Egypt and you ask yourself, oh wait, where was the altar? Where did they bring the sacrifice? Okay, and then you get to the Gemara in Pesachim. And the Gemara in Pesachim, we have Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera has a question. Rabbi Zera asked, Imurei Pesach Mitzrayim. Imurim are the internal portions of the animals that are usually go on the altar and on the altar. Okay, a regular korban, you put blood on the altar. There are certain internal organs that go on the altar, and then if it's an olah, then everything goes on the altar and the mizbech. But if it's other korbanot, then is the kohanim eat it, or the excuse me, or the people who brought the korban eat it. Okay, so now Rabbi Zera wants to say the internal organs. Where do they? Where did you Where do you burn them? Amar lo Abaye. So Abaye says, Uman leimalan. Who will tell you? How do you know that they didn't roast it? Ve'od, and here's a better answer. Hatana Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, listen to what Rav Yosef cited. Gimel mizbachot yusham. There were 3 altars, or 3 things that we regard as altars. Ala mashkof, ve'avshtei mezuzot. We have the 2 doorposts on the side and the one on the top. The 2 midiach lina lo hava. There wasn't any other. So we don't have a regular altar where you can put the internal organs. But we did have an altar for the sake of putting the blood. When you ask yourself, where do we put the blood nowadays? Okay, so if we had an actual korban, we would do it in Jerusalem. We would put our blood on the altars that we have in Jerusalem. But then the altar was a house. And if the altar was the house, so you put the blood on the side posts of the house. And that's how you turn the house into the altar. Now, once you turn the house into the altar, you want to have a korban todah where you're thanking God for taking you out of Egypt. But we can't have chametz and matzah because our house is the altar. So what we have is only the matzah part of korban todah. And we can see this is in another verse which talks about it. Tells us, okay, right here, let's just summarize. The house was the altar, so you can't have chametz, and you need to eat, in essence, only matzah to accompany the korban. And we have another pasuk which shows us this connection between the chametz and korban Pesach. The pasuk says, "Lo tishchat el chametz dam zivchi, v'lo yalin laboker zevach chag Pesach." You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened. The sacrifice of the Feast of Passover should not be left lying until the morning. So we see that there's a connection between the Korban Pesach itself that can't be together with chametz. So let's summarize this up again, okay? If we remember, we summarized all of Leila Seder into 3 points. It was bad, right? It's usually they tried to kill us, we won, let's eat, but it's not this. We're eating everything. We're eating the fact that it was bad. We had a bitter past. We're eating the fact that we have a miraculous presence, a Pesach, which is telling us of God passing over us, and the matzah of the redeeming future. But when we read again the sources of the matzah, we see that the matzah connects to all 3 points. Why does the matzah connect to all 3 points? Because the matzah as lechem oni reminds us of the distress, the bread of distress. It reminds us of what it's like to be a slave who doesn't have enough food and whose food isn't that great and isn't that yummy, and you have to cook it quickly, bake it quickly, and eat it quickly and leave, okay? So the matzah has also the aspect of being lechem oni. The matzah but is also the bread that comes together with the Pesach. When you put the matzah together with the Korban Pesach, you're turning Korban Pesach into a Korban Todah. You're turning it, you're giving it the idea of being a Thanksgiving. Okay, 1 second, Avik. And so the matzah, once you put it together with the Pesach, you're turning the Pesach, you're giving the Pesach, you're enhancing the Pesach. It's not just a Korban, it becomes a Korban Todah. It focuses it on saying thank you for the miracles. And we have the original, not original, but the special, the individual meaning of the matzah. The matzah's unique role of being also the matzah of Yitzhak, the bread of Exodus, the bread of going out, the unleavened bread of leaving Egypt. Okay, so the matzah itself combines all of them together, which is good because nowadays we don't have Korban Pesach and matzah continues with us for 7 days. So it's good that the matzah itself can give us a package deal, even if we don't have the Pesach nowadays, and even if we have the maror only for 1 night. With the Pesach, we can take the feeling for many more days and for many more ideas together. Now, Navid asks me, so we usually say Pesach matzah and maror, and should be maror, Pesach, and matzah, which is a good question. Okay, I think it's because on this night we're focusing on the Pesach. Okay, we're focusing on Pesach as being the main idea. Matzah, I think, is second in importance because it plays so many roles, and maror, gets left to the end because we really like the maror. But it's a good question, and I agree that it kind of bugs us. But really, the Pesach does talk about the miraculous night, and the maror talks about the past, and the matzah about the future. So the question will stay. So if we summarize this up, we ended up with having 3 main ideas of Leil Seder. You can organize Leil Seder according to this idea. The Mishnah and tells us, so we need lehatchil begnut u'lesayem b'shevach. We need to start with what was bad and continue to what is good. Okay, we had mafela, leor gadol, mishiabut, legeula. Okay, so we come with the maror and we end up with the matzah. Notice that that's actually what we do also on the Seder. We also focus on, we start with the maror in the beginning and we end up with the matzah or the Pesach and the matzah at the end. So we summarize this up, we end up eating it, and our matzah gets a unique role because the matzah has so many different roles throughout the evening. And one of the things that we can do, just like when we read the Haggadah, it tells a story of the evening, where we can point out and emphasize the different parts of the evening. We can also emphasize the different roles of the matzah, where the matzah can remind us how bad it was. The matzah can remind us that this korban is a korban todah, where we're saying things. And this matzah can also take us for another 7 days, right? Because the night of Leil Seder is the night we leave Egypt. That's the night we're supposed to remember all the miracles. But 7 more days, we're just walking. We're just enjoying the Yetziah. We're Chag HaMatzot, which is commemorating leaving, not what happened on the night of the Seder, but the 7 days afterwards, where we're just walking, we're just going out. That's why we like going on Tiyulim on Chag HaMatzot, right? Because we like feeling the leaving, the going out. Okay. And I hope we give you a few ideas what we can do during the Seder to help us understand better, help children understand better, help the nieces and the nephews and the cousins understand better. And all I have to do is to wish you now a Chag Sameach. And I hope you have a good one.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Wow.
Thank you. Yasher Kochachet.
Yasher Koach.
Yeah. Let me get out of this 1 second. Stop. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much. We'll all meet back here like in about 14 minutes for hearing Rabbani Racheli, Mirza Hashem. Thank you so much, Alina. It was amazing.
Has the second session begun?
It'll begin at 6:10 in another 3 minutes.
Okay.
Hi, Looney.
Hi, Ludi.
We're gonna chat with you. We're sending you a message in the chat.
Hi, everyone. Please mute yourselves.
Hi, Sephora.
Hi. How are you?
Oh, good. How are you doing? Thank you for setting this up.
Well, that is courtesy of Navit, also, and our wonderful speakers.
Oh, yeah. It was great so far.
We have to keep you busy on Sundays, Judy. If it's not Rav Hanan, it'll be something else.
And I think I'll see you for the summer session too.
Oh, that's good. Everyone listening to that.
You really got me.
I look forward to it, Judy. I'll see
Same
you
here.
tomorrow too, God willing.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me just see. Racheli? Rabbanit Racheli, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
We're gone? We're on?
We're on.
Great. Wonderful. Yofi. Shalom. Here we are. I'm just looking at there are more black boxes than actually. Oh, here we go. Tzipora, just tell me when we're over.
We have an hour. So
Okay.
that is at 7:11.
Okay, great. Yofi. So, Shavua Tov and Chodesh Tov. And really, I should say almost Shana Tova, because the Torah says, "Achodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim, rishon hu lechodshei hashana." This is you're going to set up this day as the first of the first month of the year, and as Torah goes, this would have been Rosh Hashanah. And the truth is, HaChodesh is what we read on Shabbat, Parashat HaChodesh. And it actually means specifically today, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. But for us, it's that pasuk, HaChodesh La'azeh Lachem, is very familiar, not so much from this context, but mostly if I would ask you, you would probably say from the first Rashi on the Torah, okay? That's mostly where it's familiar from. The first Rashi on the Torah starts with asking the famous question of why all of Sefer Bereshit, why all of the stories, why go through all of that? If this is a book of law, if this is a book of mitzvot, if this is supposed to teach us the specifics of how to live, it should have started in HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodeshim, with what we just read on Shabbat and what we're experiencing right now in Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That should have been the beginning of the Torah. And then Rashi brings a medrash, and in fact, I'll share with you a bit of that. Let's see. Here it is. So it's the psikta here, and it says Amar Rav Yitzchak, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but many of us learned that the reason that Rashi starts out that way because it's Rabbi Shlomo Bar Yitzchak, and in honor of his father. But actually, this Rabbi Yitzchak is a Tana from way before Rashi's time. אמר רב יצחק, לא היה צריך לכתוב את התורה אלא מן החודש הזה לכם, ולמה נכתב מבראשית? להודיע כוחו של הקדוש ברוך הוא, שנאמר כוח מעשיו הגיד לעמו. So Rav Yitzchak, the Tana, not Rashi's father, says you shouldn't have started the Torah with Bereshit, but with HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. And why did we start there? להודיע כוחו של הקדוש ברוך הוא, to tell us about the Almighty, literally the Almighty, everything he did and he's capable of. שנאמר כוח מעשיו הגיד לעמו. Okay, so כוח מעשיו הגיד לעמו in this context is mostly understood to mean if we're, why would we hear of all the stories of the Reshit? Because we should know about our God, the glories of our God. What are the glories of our God? So we answer to ourselves, it probably means Briat HaOlam and the Mabul and the great myths of the creations of the world and the beginning of the connection with Avraham Avinu and all those stories that came in Bereshit. Koach Ma'asav V'Gid La'amo, we should hear all about it. We should hear about the creation. We should hear about Mabul, etc. Rashi brings the Medrash, but with a combination with another Medrash, he actually hears the rest of the Pasuk, because often when this happens all the time in Midrash, the Darshan tells us something and quotes a half a Pasuk and assumes we know the rest of the verse. We know the whole Torah by heart, and we're finishing it up, and why waste words? But in fact, it doesn't always work. So if we would know the end of the pasuk, koach ma'asav v'gid la'amo, latet lahem nachlat goim. Okay, not only am I telling you the glory of Hashem, but specifically in the context of giving his people the land that might have belonged to other people before that. And then Rashi says what we famously know, אמר ביצחק, לא היה צריך להתחיל את התורה אלא מהחודש הזה לכם, because that's the first mitzvah. So why did we start in Bereshit? Because of כוח מעשיו וגיד לעמו, לתת להם נחלת גויים, that if the nations of the world turn to Am Yisrael, and this totally imaginary, how could I, it's not like something that we see constantly happening, right? So all the nations would turn to Israel and say, you're thieves. You conquered the land that belonged to the seven people, goyim, nations that lived in Eretz Israel. We answer, this whole land belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He created it. He gave it to whoever he wanted, and just like he gave it to whoever he wanted, he can reassign it and give it to Am Yisrael, give Eretz Yisrael to Am Yisrael. So this is the context where we get familiar with Koach Ma'asav V'Gid Le'amo, with Chodesh Hazeh Lachel, I'm sorry, and just to take a minute to think about Rashi, okay, the beginning of the just the very beginning of what we would later call the Middle Ages, in a time where Jews were prosecuted and had no self-rule whatsoever and were seriously in terrible trouble. Rashi kind of lives in a double consciousness. On the one hand, he's there in France with hardly anything for Jews to say for themselves, and in a deeper sense, he lives in a different reality. When he opens his great project of the Pirush and the Torah, he, not only in his imagination, but in his spirit, he's in a totally different place. One day, we're going to be sitting in Eretz Yisrael, and people around the world are going to blame us that we took this land from somebody else. And we will be able to answer that the creator of the world promised us this land, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so just, there's something so Jewish about this ability to live in a certain reality, but spiritually to be in a totally different sphere, with a totally different outlook on the world and about yourself amongst the people. So that's Rashi. And it really connects or reminds of one of the great arguments that the Jewish world had with the Christian world. The Christian world chose to sanctify Chamisha Chumshei Torah, the books of Moshe Rabbeinu, but to exempt people from the practical commitment to practicing mitzvot, okay? And the main idea or the main argument would, if it would be phrased in Jewish language, it would probably say Rachmana liba bai. Okay, that's Aramaic, and it means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the heart. Okay, so the Christian view says, forget about all the practical mitzvot. God really wants your heart, and that's why we're going to concentrate on the heart. The Jewish point of view, and looking at the fact that Torah actually didn't start in a Chodesh Hazeh Lachem. Torah decided to start from Bereshit, okay? It's answering back, yes, Rachmana liba bai, God wants your heart, but the way to reach your heart is through a whole series of practical commandments, of a whole array of practices, of things you do. And then eventually you create your heart, you create a certain consciousness. And then you use that consciousness and that heart to continue on doing the right things. It's kind of a circular thing. Torah says, I'm going to use active mitzvot in order to create a certain consciousness, a certain state of heart. And then once you're there, I'm going to continue and rely on that consciousness to make sure that you behave properly, that your society is just, that we're like Avram's mission in the world. We're doing tzedakah mishpat. Okay, so this is like just a general opening regarding the place we're at. We're at a Chodesh Hazeh Lachem. This is exactly our point in time. That's what we read in Kriyat Torah. When we read further exactly in that place in the Torah, we're in the 12th chapter in Sefer Shemot, we are specifically in a point in time where, before I'd like to see your faces again. So here we are. We're exactly in the point in time where we've gone through 9 plagues already. And this is after years and years of slavery in Egypt. and there's a feeling of something very serious going on, and Moshe and Aaron are in and out of Paro's palace. And right now, at the eve of Makat Bechorot, what we're going to have now is instructions for what's coming up. Okay, we're expecting in the next psukim to hear about the next plague, Makat Bechorot, that's going to be very critical and dramatic. We're going to hear about Korban Pesach and how exactly, to the details, are you supposed to sacrifice it, and what are you going to wear, and how are you going to prepare yourself, and then about the matzot, and while everything is going to go on, and again, picture this as the people are hearing this just minutes before everything is starting to happen. Okay, so this is supposed to be a very down-to-earth practical instruction for this is going to be Korban Pesach, and this is going to be Makat Bechorot, and this is how you're going to dress, and this is how you're going to do it. And while everything, will have everything's going to be crazy in Mitzrayim, and people are going to be dying in their houses, we're going to escape, and you're going to come quickly after me, and that will be the end of the long period of slavery in Mitzrayim. So this is the context of what we're learning, what we're going to read now, and let's try to read it together. So the first thing we hear is a chodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim, rishon hu lachem lachodeshei hashana. We discussed that, and then there comes the instructions. They're told to take ish selevet avot selavait. They're going to take what's going to turn into korban pesach, and they're instructed to eat it in a very specific way, all ready to run out of Egypt. They have whatever their belts on their whatever waist, and their shoes on their feet, and their sticks in their hand, already all prepared, and you're gonna eat it very quickly, very hastily. Okay, it's Pesach, and then I will go through the land of Egypt on this night, and I will have every firstborn on the land of Egypt, from humans and from animals, and Elohei Mitzrayim, we assume, is mostly cows. They're going to get, their final plague. And you're going to be spared because the blood that I told you to put on your doors is going to be the sign, okay? והיה אדם לכם לאות על הבתים אשר אתם שם, וראיתי את הדם, ופסחתי עליכם, I'll skip your houses, ולא יהיה בכם נגף, nobody's going to get hurt by בני ישראל, while I hit ארץ מצרים. והיה היום הזה לכם לזיכרון, וחגותם אותו חג לאדוני לדורותיכם, חוקת עולם תחוגוהו. Okay, so we're still in the middle of the instructions of this is what's going to happen, this is how we're going to do it, and we hear, and this day is gonna stay a memorial forever, and you're going to celebrate it as a holiday for Hashem for your generations, and it's going to be chukat olam, a law forever in your people. Okay, and it explains what holiday exactly. There's going to be the holiday of Pesach, the first day, and the 7 days of Matzot, Chag HaMatzot, and there are prohibitions on chametz, isur karet. And here we come again. ושמרתם את המצות, כי בעצם היום הזה הוצאתי את צבאותיכם מארץ מצרים, ושמרתם את היום הזה לדורותיכם חוקת עולם. Okay? So this matzah that you're going to bake right now, and you're going to be in such a hurry that it's not going to become chametz, you're going to keep it. Okay? And what does keeping mean? It means something that's going to stay on forever with you, okay? It's going to be a holiday, it's going to be a memory, it's going to be for your generations, לדורותיכם חוקת עולם. We continue. And Hashem is going to go from house to house, and they'll see the blood on the mezuzot, and it will skip, okay. ושמרתם את הדבר הזה לחוק, לך ולבניך עד עולם. And this, what I'm telling you now, is not just instructions for right now. It's going to be your law for generations to come. And, okay. And והיה כי תבואו לארץ, and when you come to Eretz Yisrael, and this seems like the most far-fetched idea at this point, right? Everybody's very tense. They're on their packages. They're sitting with their belts and their sticks, and they're just like they were told. They hear, when you eventually come into your country and you're going to keep this form of worship, okay? ושמרתם את העבודה הזאת. והיה כי אמרו אליכם בניכם, מה העבודה הזאת לכם? Okay, so in this part, the verses we're reading in chapter 12 and 13, we have 3 out of the 4 sons, okay? So we already hear, מה העבודה הזאת לכם? What are you doing? What form of worship is this? ואמרתם, זבח פסח הוא להשם. You're going to tell your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, when they ask you, you're going to say, this is Korban Pesach because this happened and that happened, etc., etc. So they do it, and in the middle of the night, Hashem, the Makat Bechorot starts, and everybody all the Bechorot in the land of Egypt are hit. And then we conclude, Moshav Bnei Yisrael asher yeshvu b'Mitzrayim 30 shana ו400 shana, 430 years. And in the end of this time, Hashem is taking everybody out of Egypt, and it gets the description Leil Shimurim. Okay, Leil Shimurim הוא להשם להוציאה מארץ מצרים, הוא הלילה הזה להשם, שימורים לכל בני ישראל לדורותם. Okay, again, for the generations. And it goes on. Okay, so I'll stop here for a minute. And I'll say, one of the most prominent feelings you get while you read this is that sometimes, I think we all have this, but it's easy for us to tease the youngsters. We always tell them, you got somewhere, so live the experience, feel where you're at. Why are you hurrying to take pictures, post on social media? It seems to us always that, and of course we also have that problem, but before we even breathe into a situation, experience it, live in it, celebrate it, actually be there. Before with that, we're already busy with how are we going to tell this story, and who are we going to tell, and where are we going to post it, and what pictures are going to remain, and that whole thing. And often we're critical of that. But when we look at the Torah here, it seems that that's exactly what's going on. Before the Torah, this is the very, very, very tense time. And there's a lot of very practical stuff they have to hear because they're going to be leaving Egypt tonight. And there's going to be a plague. And there's Korban Pesach and everything. And more than the Torah wants to instruct everybody about what's going to happen, it seems like the Torah is very, very busy with how is this story going to be told? Okay? How are you going to answer your children when they ask you? How is this going to turn into a holiday for generations? And matzot is not just tonight because you happen not to have something become chametz, you don't have the time for it. It's going to be a holiday of 7 days, etc., etc. And you're going to come into your own country and people are going to ask you. It's really surprising because it seems like more than the Torah is concentrating on the event itself, is concentrating on how are we going to tell the story, okay? Let's continue a little bit more. Let's see. So here we are in the next chapter, okay? And it seems that once we had the first mitzvah, v'chodesh hazeh lachem, okay? Hashem is giving this nation of slaves the key to their own time. Okay, Kiddush HaChodesh. And if there's something that a slave has no effect on is the way their time is run and spent, and control over time is the greatest thing you can give a person when they're growing into freedom. From, often we say this nation is going to come out of slavery, and slavery is going to come out of the nation, and it takes quite a while. But getting the key to a chodesh hazeh lachem is the first time you have some responsibility over your own time. It's the last thing a slave has. So once that starts, we already have more and more mitzvot. Okay, so we already read mitzvot that had to do with Korban Pesach and mitzvot that had to do with chametz and matzah and the holiday of Pesach, and it continues. Kadesh li kol bechor peter kol rechem bivnei Israel. We're hearing about pidyon bechorot, both in like pidyon haben that we do. The special status of the firstborn, both by humans and with the cattle and different mitzvot that have to do with bechorot. And Moshe continues, ויאמר משה אל העם, זכור את היום הזה אשר יצאתם ממצרים מבית עבדים, כי בחוזק יד הוציא השם אתכם מזה, ולא יאכל חמץ. Okay, so again, as we go out, as we're finishing our Korban Pesach and we're stepping, so Moshe says, and remember this day, okay? Remember it for generations. It's a little bit like you turn to a young person and you say, you're going to tell your grandchildren, this feels like just another day, you're going to tell your grandchildren that you experienced Corona and what it meant and everything. It's like saying to a person, note, this is a historical time. You might just be busy living it, but you have to take a mental note that something very, very historical is happening now, and you're going to end up telling about it to your children and your grandchildren. So Moshe says, remember. ויקה ויך השם אל ארץ הכנעני והחיתי והאמורי והחיזי והיבוסי אשר נשבע לאבותיך לתת לך ארץ זבת חלב ודבש, ועבדת את העבודה הזאת בחודש הזה, okay? So, and you're going to get to your country, the same country we mentioned that was previously owned by other nations, and you're going to celebrate Pesach, and you're going to bring Korban Pesach. והיגדת לבנך ביום ההוא לאמור, בעבור זה עשה השם לי בצאתי ממצרים, and you're going to end up telling your children. And we continue, והיה לך לאות על ידיך ולזיכרון בין עיניך למען תהיה תורת אדוני בפיך, כי ביד חזקה הוציאך אדוני ממצרים. So we're already mentioning אות על היד וזיכרון בין העיניים. It starts sounding like tefillin. We're going to get it more clearly in a couple of psukim. ושמרת את החוקה הזאת למועדם ימים ימים, and it goes on and on, okay? והיה כי ישאלך בנך מחר לאמור, מה זאת? Your son is going to ask you, what is this? And you're going to say, בחוזק יד הוציאנו השם מצרים מבית עבדים. ויהי כי יקשה פרעה לשלחנו וכולי וכולי, and there's all these בכורות that were hurt in the plague, and that's why I have special mitzvot that relate to firstborns. Okay, and the last pasuk here is, והיה לאות על ידיך ולטוטפות בין עיניך, כי בחוזק יד הוציאנו השם ממצרים. And the last thing here is literally mitzvah tefillin. Okay, you're going to have a sign on your arm and between your eyes, כי בחוזק יד הוציאנו השם ממצרים, because Hashem took us with a strong metaphorical arm out of Mitzrayim. So what did we have here? We had first of all, the continuation of the same spirit, that as you get the very, very, very basic instructions, more than that, we're busy with how we're going to tell the story, how we're going to celebrate it, how we're going to commemorate, how we're going to answer questions eventually, etc. Also, we already have some more mitzvot that are mitzvot zecher l'yetziat Mitzrayim, okay? And we have to say that the Torah mentions more than 50 times all over the Torah this notion of Kadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim, and we have to remember it, etc. But there are over 30 mitzvot that have a specific reasoning, that the mitzvah, that specific mitzvah, is Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. Okay. Now I don't know how it worked before, but I'm gonna give it a try. If people can we'll try to think up together mitzvot that are Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. Okay, I'm telling you there are over 30 of them. So can we get some? You can, let's see if it's up to you. If you can unmute yourself and give us some mitzvot that are Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim.
Shabbat.
Okay, Shabbat. Great, good beginning. So the truth is, as a child, I always understood why Shabbat is Zecher L'Maaseh Bereshit. It's commemorating the creation of the world. I never understood why Shabbat is Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim. It wasn't intuitive to me. Okay, so maybe you can help me. Why is Shabbat Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim?
Because we can rest now. We're not slaves.
Right.
We can. We're free men to be able to rest like Hashem.
Right. So here it's and I don't know why it was difficult of me as a child. Once you think about it, it's easy. It's the social side of Shabbat. The social side of Shabbat is the mere idea that there's a point in time where you can stop working, and that you could make sure that anybody in your household, you might have slaves yourself, or animals that work for you, or people that work for you for a fee. Everybody in your household is going to rest. And that's the direct result of understanding what slavery is and what freedom means. And the idea that one could rest is, beyond being the greatest gift for the world, is also very tightly connected to the idea of the redemption from Egypt, to the fact that you understand what it is not being able to ever stop, never. Okay? More mitzvot that are Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim.
Leket and Peah.
Say that again, Janet.
Leket and Peah.
Oh, leket and peah. Okay.
Leket.
Yeah. I hear you. So matnot aniyim, actually, what you're saying. There are different ways of actually literal tzedakah, like we experience it in the Jewish community today, is not mentioned much in the Torah. But what the Torah encourages us to do is take care of the weaker parts of society through giving them their rightful share in agriculture. Okay, so it's literally theirs. They don't have to come and beg for it, and also giving loans for anybody that needs in the time of their need. So here, okay, more.
Being good to the ger.
Okay, so the status of ger, yatom, v'almana, okay, and slaves themselves. There is an eved ivri and there is an eved knani, and all the laws that have to do with noticing the people that are in a disadvantage in your society, whether they're newcomers or the widows or the orphans or the poor people or slaves. There are lots of mentions and rules of how to behave towards these people, and it always says "Ki ger hayita be'eretz Mitzrayim," okay, or "Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim," etc. Great. More.
The last bracha of the Shema.
Sorry.
The last bracha of the Shema.
Okay, so we have Kriyat Shema that mentions Yetziat Mitzrayim, and one of the mitzvot, there's the whole argument that we hear, not argument, discussion that we hear in the Haggadah regarding do you have to say it in the days, do you have to say it in the night? So one of the mitzvot that are Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim is to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim. Okay, it's a mitzvah for itself, and the discussion we hear in the Haggadah is the discussion regarding expanding that tzivui from the days to the nights too, and we do it through Kriyat Shema. You're right. More.
Pidyon Ben and Sukkot.
Right. So Pidyon Ben, the things that we just saw, the whole, there's quite a collection of mitzvot that have to do with firstborns, and they're inspired by Makat Bechorot and the special treatment that Am Yisrael got in Makat Bechorot. And then you say Sukkot. Sukkot is the time where we relive the experience of coming out of Egypt and living in a sukkah and experiencing midbar and experiencing the hardship, even though we say it's ananei kavod, and maybe there's also a nicer side of it, but Sukkot itself tells the story. What else?
I'm not sure, but I think maybe it's tzedakah, like the mitzvah of tzedakah.
So I think that connects to matnot aniyim that we said leket shechava.
Lechem Mishnah for the man.
Right. So Lechem Mishneh that's already the Rabbanan, but it commemorates the man, and Suda Shlishit commemorates the way in the desert. What about basic things? Okay.
Well, also in all our tefillot, Shelo Asani Aved, Az Yashir Moshe, every tefillah we do refers back to Yetziat Mitzrayim.
You're saying it's such a basic thing in our national personality that whenever we open up talking about even about the basis of the relationship with Hashem, the covenants that we have with Hashem, you can't go into it without time and time again mentioning Yetziat Mitzrayim, right? Okay, and I'm talking about specific mitzvot. So you said Sukkot. With Sukkot, we get the rest of the holidays, right? We get everything that goes on in Pesach, in Leil HaSeder, Matzah, Maror, right? Matzah is Adina, I heard, just spoke about it, right? So you commemorate the freedom, and you commemorate the hardship, and you commemorate Korban Pesach, and mitzvah lesaper b'tziat Mitzrayim. The special, we spoke about the mitzvah to remember that happens every day and every night, but the special mitzvah of Leil HaSeder is to tell the story, okay? So, and to tell it through questions and answers. This system of mitzvot zecher l'yetziat Mitzrayim, and as I said, there are over 30 mitzvot. That's a tremendous part of the mitzvot that are literally zecher l'yetziat Mitzrayim. It gets to the extent that there's a mitzvah not to cheat in your weights. Okay, if you're a merchant and you weigh things, midot, mishkolot, it says there on the mitzvah not to cheat when you negotiate. Or when you sell things, it says on that Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim, okay? And you say, whoa, how is that Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim? So if I would try to divide this huge system of mitzvot, I would, maybe this is a little like in a generalization, but I think I could probably divide it into two. There are many, many mitzvot, like Pesach, Leil HaSeder, the remembrance of Yerushalayim, of Mitzrayim, the telling of Mitzrayim, Pesach, Matzah, Maror, Pesach, Korban Pesach, Sukkot. All these mitzvot are there to create the consciousness, to create the identity, to make the story part of us, okay? To make us familiar with the story of the slavery and the redemption and Yetziat Mitzrayim. Okay, so you sit in the holiday and you tell your children, and you go through, and you sit in the sukkah and you explain to your children again, and this whole collection of remembering every day and telling the story and experiencing it. The focus there is to create the right consciousness, to create the story as a major part of your identity. Okay. And then there's the second part of the mitzvot that uses that consciousness, that uses that identity, the awareness to the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, to push you towards proper behaviors that are the other part of the mitzvot. The way you treat the ger, the yatom, the almana, the slave, even the way you keep your integrity in business, okay? Because there the Gemara says, what does that have to do with Yetziat Mitzrayim? If you cheat on your weights, and the Gemara answers, well, I know the difference between, like the genetic difference between any firstborn that's a real firstborn in Mitzrayim, and you think you can cheat, you can hide, you can do things crookedly. I can see you through and through. Okay, so I would say, similar to what we did in the beginning when we spoke about Sefer Bereshit, there's a whole array of mitzvot that are there to create the right heart, the right consciousness, the story. We know through them, we experience the story, we acquire the story. And then once the story is there and the consciousness is there and the sensitivity is there, and you know what slavery is, and you know what freedom means, then the Torah uses that to tell you, now do the right thing. Now treat people properly. Now notice the weaker parts of society. Now create a society that's just and honest and caring. Okay. So again, we have kind of a circular idea here. Okay. You build the story through actions, through deeds, and you use the story to create new actions and deed. and there it goes on. Okay.
Shemitah.
Yeah. What?
It made me think of Shemitah.
Shemitah, for sure. Shemitah again is the ability to let go of property and to give some of it to the poor, etc., etc. When we collect all of this, okay, and we say again that in the psukim that were supposed to be instructions for the next few hours, the Torah is so busy with creating the story and creating the future worship and creating the future dialogue that's going to go on between our great grandchildren and the people that are coming out of Egypt. And when we look at this vast system of mitzvot, okay, and the way it works in the life of the Jewish people, you get to the conclusion that it's not only that more than the Torah was busy telling people what to do, it was busy telling people that this is a story that's going to be told. You can say beyond that, you can say that this is a tremendous historic event, okay, in the life of a people. They come out of their house of slavery and they're becoming a free nation and they're going to their land. But more than that terrific historic event shaped the Jewish people. What shaped the Jewish people is the way the Torah chose to shape them through the story, meaning this terrific array of Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim had even more of an effect on the people than Yetziat Mitzrayim itself. Okay, I hope I was clear in that. I'll say it again. The Yetziat Mitzrayim is a tremendous historic event. But what has the tremendous or the even greater effect on what kind of people we're going to be and what kind of people is created over generations, it's the way the Torah instructs us to remember, the way the Torah instructs us to tell the story and to live it out. Okay, the mitzvot that are stamped as Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim had a greater effect on who we are and what our identity is than the historic event itself. And I saw there was something in the chat and I'm curious to see what it was. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, there's a question here about Amalek and weighing the midot. It might be there, but it's part of the mitzvah itself. It's not preparing for Amalek in any way. Okay, so we're back to our. Wait, I want one more thing. I'll say this. There is, okay, here's a story. There's a great educator. He's already an older man. His name is Avram Infeld. And Avram Infeld was born in South Africa. And over the years, he was a tremendous educator for Jewish identity in the diaspora. And he had a lot to do with a lot of overseas organizations and very, very important Jewish educator. And he tells this story. He says, when he grew up in South Africa, he wasn't exceptionally Zionist, but then at one point, actually right after he went out, he finished high school and he was thinking of going to university. His father kind of turned to him and said, "You're a young man. There's a Jewish state was just established. What are you doing here?" And he says, "Oh no, Mom." His father turns to him again and he says, "Goodbye. You're a young man. There's a new Jewish state. Go." And this father was apparently a very dominant man, and he picked himself up right after high school and went to study in the Hebrew U in Jerusalem. And he says, "I come from a family of very prominent physicists. Okay, their physics is the greatest field in our family," and he starts mentioning names of very important figures in physics. And he says, from the time I was born, my father was convinced that I'm going to be the greatest physics scientist. So great, I'll shame Einstein. Okay. And, you know, throughout my childhood, I was raised to go study physics. And I get to the Hebrew University and I register to study physics, and I go into the physics lab, and I'm there for the first day, and then for the second day. And then the third day, I look through the window and I see this gorgeous young lady walk into the history department. And that, he says, is how I got my bachelor's degree in history. And he says, okay, she's the mother of my children and the grandmother of my 14 grandchildren. And oh yeah, okay. And then I had to tell my father, and I was very nervous about it. And it wasn't, you know, WhatsApp and stuff like that. So there were those aerograms on thin paper. You would write very, very in small letters to fill them up. And I explained to my father that I know you raised me to study physics, but I changed my course and I'm gonna do my BA in Jewish history. And then Avram Infeld waits very anxiously to get the response from his father. And after a while, he gets this letter, and his father gets back to him, and he reads, and he sees his father's furious. And as he reads, he realizes that his father is not furious at him. He's saying, what's wrong with them there in the Hebrew University? The Jewish people don't have a history. The Jewish people have a memory. Okay? And he says, I was 18 years old. I had no idea what he was talking about. Okay? And okay, as a Jewish educator, he already has a different perspective. So that's the story by Avram Infeld saying, or his father actually saying, there's no such thing as Jewish history. Jews don't have a history. They have a memory. Now, between us, okay, so what's the difference between history and a memory? I guess history would be that thing that's on the shelf. You either open it or you don't open it. You read it or you don't read it. It's accurate or it's not accurate. It's something very exterior to you. Memory is an experience. It's part of your identity. It's something dynamic. It's something alive. It's something that actually is living now. And sometimes people spend their life contradicting their memory or arguing with their memory or having to deal with their memory. And sometimes it influences them in a positive way, but it forms an identity. It has real effect and influence on your future decision and who you are and where you're going to go and what everything means to you. Okay, as opposed to history, which is okay, nice to have. Okay? I brought another piece here. It's from I actually found it. The original is in English, and then once I translated and I lost the original, but now I found it again in English. So here we're gonna do it. Okay, so it's Jonathan Safran Foer, Everything is Illuminated. And he writes this piece. Jews have 6 senses: touch, taste, sight, smell, hearing, memory. While Gentiles experience and process the world through the traditional senses and use memory only as a second-order means of interpreting events, for Jews, memory is no less primary than the prick of a pin, or its silver glimmer, or the taste of the blood it pulls from the finger. The Jew is pricked by a pin and remembers other pins. It is only by tracing the pinprick back to other pinpricks when his mother tried to fix his sleeve while his arm was still in it, when his grandfather's fingers fell asleep from stroking his great-grandfather's damp forehead, when Abraham tested the knife point to be sure Yitzchak would feel no pain. That, after remembering all of that, the Jew is able to know why it hurts. When a Jew encounters a pin, he asks, what does it remember like? Okay. So, Saffron Foyer's take is, for Jews, memory is as essential, as basic, as immediate as a smell or a taste or a pain. It's something they can physically experience, and the way we interpret reality is not only through what we see and smell and taste and everything. It's through our memory. Okay. I think that together with Infeld's statement, they're not identical, but they say, we Jews, we don't discuss history. We discuss identity, we discuss memory, we discuss experience. And that memory for us, it's as alive and as felt as if something would be now burning in the kitchen and I'd be attacked by the smell. It's something so literal, so sensual, so immediately experienced. Tov. So I want to share with you something that Maimonides said, okay? The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, in the Guide for the Perplexed. I brought a translation. I hope I won't lose myself in translation. Let's see this. Okay. Okay. So what Rambam is discussing here are places in the Torah where there are long lists or verses that seem, not needed, or things that seem kind of irrelevant, and the Torah dedicates so many words to them that you don't understand why things show up sometimes in the Chumash, and the Rambam tries to explain that. So he says, it is also necessary to note the following observation. The view we take of things described by others is different from the view we take of things seen by us as eyewitnesses. For that which we see contains many details which are essential and must be fully described. The reader of the description believes that it contains superfluous matter or useless repetition. But if he had witnessed the event of which he read, he would see the necessity of every part of the description. When we therefore notice narratives in the Torah which are in no connection, with any of the commandments, any mitzvot, we're inclined to think that they are entirely superfluous or too lengthy or contain repetition. Bothers me. Okay. Or contain repetition. But this is only because we do not see the particular incidents which make those narratives noteworthy. Of this kind is the enumeration of the stations of the Israelites in the wilderness, the tachanot. They says veyachnu veis'u, veyachnu veis'u. They stop and they stop again, and they go and they stop and they go, and there's a whole list of all the places that they stopped on their way in the desert. At first sight, it appears to be entirely useless. But in order to obviate such a notion, Scripture says, and Moshe wrote their goings out according to their journeys by the commandment of the Lord. Okay, this list was literally dictated to Moshe by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, he doesn't add anything superfluous. Hashem tells him to write this in the Torah. It was indeed most necessary that these should be written. And here's a critical sentence. Okay. For miracles are only convincing to those who witnessed them, whilst coming generations who know them only from the account given by others may consider them untrue. But miracles cannot continue and last for all generations. It is even inconceivable that they should be permanent. Now, the greatest of miracles described in the law is the state. Okay, so 1 second. Wait, I want to. Okay, what is Rambam saying? Rambam is saying, say you were fortunate enough to experience an unbelievable miracle. Okay, you were there in Kriyat Yam Suf, you were there in the plagues, you were there in Mount Sinai. So hopefully, and even that isn't for sure, but Rambam says the first generation, the person who saw it with their eyes, it was stamped in their neshama. It's life-changing. Okay, they're live witnesses of miracles. Okay? And again, I'm kind of hesitating because I think we can testify that sometimes we are part of tremendous things happening, our generation, our previous generation, and or even on a very personal level, something happens and we say, oh, what a miracle, it was a lifesaver. I'll never forget this moment. And then 2 hours and 2 days and 2 months and 2 years later, I hope we can live up to this thought that we'll never forget it, right? But what Rambam doesn't relate to that. Rambam says that the first generation that experiences it, they're marked for life. Okay, they hold the miracle. They're the witnesses of the miracle. But then the next generation, they get a story. Okay? And a story is an animal in danger of extinction. Okay, there's so many dangers that are out there awaiting stories. Stories fade away. Stories are forgotten. Stories are denied. Stories are changed. Stories are deemed as fake news and as all kinds of I don't want to go into modern day issues, but this idea that once something is not your firsthand personal experience, but a story that someone handed down to you, that itself is a very dangerous moment in the culture, in the passing on, in the religion, in the experience as it passes on. Somehow always the Hebrew sounds to me more powerful. So I'll read it just for a minute. These sentences in Hebrew. He says, הצורך בזה גדול מאוד, כי כל הניסים ודאיים רק למי שראה אותם, only whoever saw them. אבל בעתיד הזכרתם הופכת סיפור שהשומע עשוי להכחישו. It becomes a story that might be denied. Okay, so here now let's continue. Okay, so one of the greatest things is the traveling through the desert for 40 years with a daily supply of man. This wilderness, as described in the scripture, consists of places where fiery serpents and scorpions and drought, where there was no water, and places very remote from cultivated land and naturally not adapted for the habitation of man. It is no place of seed or figs or vines or pomegranates. Neither is there any water to drink. A land that no one passed through and where no one dwelt. Okay, so he brings many psukim to prove that it was a total desert. It was like the middle of the Sahara. Okay. All these miracles were wonderful, public, and witnessed by people. But God knew that in the future, people might doubt the correctness of the accounts of these miracles. In the same manner as they doubt the accuracy of other narratives. They might think that the Israelites stayed in the wilderness in a place not far from inhabited land, where it was possible for man to live, that it was like those deserts in which the Bedouins, I guess, live in the present, or that they dwelt in such places in which they could plow, sow, or reap, will live on some vegetables that was growing there, or that the man came always down in those places as an ordinary natural product, or that there were wells of water in those places. All these explanations, like our need to make everything rational, would push us towards saying, oh, yeah, there's Slav, there's man, there are places where you can do it. It wasn't real desert, it was next to the desert, etc., etc. In order to remove all these doubts and to firmly establish the accuracy of the account of these miracles, Scripture enumerates all the stations so that coming generations may see them and learn the greatness of the miracle which enables human beings to live in those places 40 years. Okay, so basically what the Rambam says here is the lists are there in order for us to see with our eyes. We'll have the map, we'll find all these places, and we'll realize that it was straight in the middle of the desert. None of those excuses and rationalizations work. Okay, and then he continues and he says, for this very reason, Yoshua cursed him who would ever build up Jericho. The effect of the miracle was to remain forever, so that anyone who would see the walls sunk in the ground would understand that it was not in the condition of building pulled them down by human hands, but sunk through a miracle. In like manner, there's a good reason for every passage, the object of which we cannot see. Okay, anything written in the Torah, it's never in vain. Well, look at the time. We must always apply the words of our sages. It is not a vain thing for you, and if it seems vain, it seems your fault. Okay, if there's something empty there, it might be we that are empty. Okay, what did we have in the Rambam? Okay, Rambam stated a tremendous problem. The tremendous problem is that stories are in danger. Stories are fading, stories are forgotten, stories are denied. And I think the most striking example I ever saw was, you know what, I'll say another word. Then he brings the solution. The solution for him is keeping all the details, keeping all the lists, all the names, all the artifacts. And like we say in Yad Vashem, nobody's going to deny that there was a Holocaust because we have so much information. Really? It doesn't seem like it bothers any of the deniers to deny. Okay, once they're into denial, no amount of details and facts and artifacts actually help us with this problem. A story is always in danger. Okay, and the most striking example I remember is 4 years ago in the UN, they had these resolutions that denied the special historical connection that the Jews had for Jerusalem, right? And outside the building in New York, it says, "Lo yisa goy el goy cherev velo yilmedu od milchama," right? The nations will, whatever the I can't translate. And you turn to the people in the building and you say, who's that Joshua? Sorry, not Joshua, Isaiah. Who's that Isaiah whose words are written on your very own building? Okay, is he not a Jew from Jerusalem? And it never bothered them to sit inside the building and to say that Jews have no special connection to Jerusalem, okay? So it seems like the problem is a unique problem. It's a very clear problem. The solution is maybe there's no other choice, but there's something so pathetic about the solution because it works as far as it works. You think there wasn't a person that walked through next to Chomot Yericho and he said, the sand must be very soft here, the wall sunk. What do I want to say? And I know I'm supposed to finish now, so I'm going to steal 3.5 minutes, okay? Tzipora, say it's okay. Okay, all right. Toda. So what is a problem in, say testimonies, okay? We're very aware of the fact that those testimonies are problematic. A memory that's told over and over and over, as very exciting memories are, and very traumatic memories, constantly change, okay? Every time you say it, the new synapses in your neurological settings are created and the story changes. And that's a terrible problem for the courts, okay? But what is a terrible problem for the courts is actually the solution for us, because we're not looking for history. we're looking for memory. Okay, we're not looking to create some kind of, PhD report on something or to read some text. As we're looking to create the consciousness, to create the identity. And the fact that every time we retell the story, it changes because we tell it through our perspective, through who we are, very special individual that we are, is in Tafshin Pei Aleph, right now, in this point of time. We're retelling the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. It's a unique occurrence of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, okay? It's a unique creation of a memory. It's a unique creation of an identity, okay? And we treat it like Jews treat memory, okay? Not as the history, as memory, not as, just another way to interpret, but as alive, as smell and as taste and as pain, okay? I'd like to finish with the Netivot Shalom. This is the Rebbe of Slonim, of Noach Rozovsky, and I'll read a little bit, mostly I'll just say what he says, okay? He quotes first he discusses, where is this? Here it is. Netivot Shalom. Okay. First he discusses the Shabbat, and he says, when we practice Shabbat, it's not only that we connect to the memory of the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world so-and-so years ago. It's not that. It's something that's happening right now. The world was given energy for, one more week. And if not for the next Shabbat that will renew the energy and the liveliness of the world, that would be the end of the world. The next Shabbat comes and it gives the whole universe the livelihood for one more week. And every Shabbat, it's Zikaron L'Maaseh Bereshit, literally, not only remembering what happened long ago, but actually renewing the world every Shabbat. And he says, similarly, that's what happens in Leil HaSeder. He quotes the Orach Chaim HaKadosh that says, El Motziam Mimitzrayim. The pasuk uses a present progressive, that Hashem takes us out from Mitzrayim as an ongoing process, okay? Not El Hotziam Mimitzrayim in the past, but it's something that continues happening now. Okay? And he goes on and he says there are 50 different versions and ways and implications of Yetziat Mitzrayim and of the memory of Yetziat Mitzrayim. And every time we mention it, every time we relive it, we live another sense, and we relive Yetziat Mitzrayim in another sense, in another meaning. Okay? And it's an ongoing process. It's happening now. Okay? So I'll whoever has the pages, you're welcome to read the Netivot Shalom inside, but I'll try to collect what we said. We were saying Torah's main concern, beyond the historical event itself, is how this story will be told and how it will be remembered. Beyond that, it created a tremendous system of practical mitzvot that create the consciousness and that use that consciousness to create a just society and people with integrity and people with sensitivity, etc. Okay, and then we heard that for Jews it's not about history, it's about memory, and it's not just memory. It's a very live, real sense. And we heard the Rambam say, but what could we do with the story? Okay, a story is a problem. A story is denied. A story changes. A story is forgotten. And we say the answer is not El Hotzia Mimitzrayim, something that happened way in the past. It's El Motzia Mimitzrayim. It's something that's happening now. It's our memory. It's our identity. It's the story we choose to tell ourselves now. So the work we have, and this is my last sentence, is like we're going to say that we see, we feel ourselves as if we left Egypt today, and it's like it's a sort of a play. We act it out, right? And how do you work with actors? You tell them, connect within yourself to the experience it connects to. If it's pain, you have to play. If you have to cry, if you have to laugh, connect within yourself to what this means to you. what Zichron Yetziat Mitzrayim today means to you. And then you can feel the experience of Yetziat Mitzrayim, and then you can act it out and pass on the story to the next generations. Okay? Chag Sameach, Chodesh Tov, and great seeing everybody.
Chag
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you.
Rav Sperling is here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbanit Navi. Thank you, Rabbanit Racheli.
We will have 4 minutes to make a coffee and come back here, or 3 minutes, so we can hear Rav Sperling and practical halachot, especially regarding this year when Erev Pesach Shabbat. We're all gonna need every minute of the practical halacha here.
Hi, Rav Sperling.
Shalom uvracha. Erev tov.
Shalom, Erev tov. Should I put up? I'll put up the screensaver, the banner with your bio on it. 1 second.
And wait, and I'll be able to see the chats or some of the questions. How are we going to do that?
You can look in the chat. People are going to feed questions into the chat.
Right. Let's see how that goes. See if I can do 2 things at one time. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Wow, a lot of people here. See, someone wrote here.
That's Shayna wrote.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Shayna. I feel so proud of myself. I managed to clean 1 room this morning, today. We did the whole business. Baruch Hashem.
The hard part is starting.
Yeah, no, it was good. Picked everything up and completely washed the floor, changed the filters in the air conditioning, everything. Got up on a ladder, cleaned the fan. Baruch Hashem. It's exciting. You put on the shiur on the speaker and you just start listening and then you just clean it. You do 2 in 1, right? You learn some Torah and you clean the
right. That's
really good. Erev Tov Rabbanit Navit. It's good to see you.
Great to be here. I just missed it. Is there chametz in our filters of our air conditioning?
No, it's just because I've got to be very careful what I say. I was on the ladder and because I was cleaning up probably where there's no chametz anyway, and I figured once a year it's good to open up the air conditioner and take the filter out and wash it under the seat. But it's really just cleaning because I'm cleaning already. Thank you for pointing that out. That's right. My rabbi and teacher Rav Aviner is very famous for telling people to do their Pesach cleaning in 2 sections. He said the bit you need to do before Pesach, you should do very quickly just before Pesach. And all the cleaning stuff that we do just because it's spring, he said, why don't you do that before Hanukkah? I do it at another time of the year. Except I can't, if I'm already cleaning, come on, you've got the shiur on, you've got the speaker on, and you're already moving the bed. So why not? I just do everything. It's a lot of fun. It's good. All right, should we begin? You tell me, I'm in your hands.
Great. Yeah, we could start. Sipar, what do you think?
I think we can start.
Yofi, Erev Tov. It's wonderful to be here. This year we have a very special year. As Rabbanit Navit said, we have Pesach that falls out on Saturday night, Motzi Shabbos. And this is a very special occurrence. It doesn't happen so often in our Jewish calendar, it's like about 10% of the time, 11% of the time. It's going to happen in another 4 years. So you should keep your notes. And then after that, it's not going to happen for another 20. So we're going to learn it for this time and then for another 4 years, and then we're going to take a little break. So what are the special things when Pesach falls on Motzei Shabbat? So let's start chronologically. The first thing is that the fast of the firstborn, which is normally done on the day before Pesach, before Seder night, this year is early. We're going to do it on Thursday, so it doesn't interfere with our pleasure of bringing Shabbos in, because bringing Shabbos in on an empty stomach is kind of not good. But the truth is that most people, even the firstborn sons, don't actually fast in our day and age. Nearly all of them go to a religious meal that exempts them from having to fast. So one way to do that is to organize a Brit Milah for that Thursday. And if anyone wants to organize that, it's probably a bit hard to organize. Or you could organize a wedding, except, you know, the parents would probably kill the Khatan and Kala for getting married on Erev Pesach. So we do it by organizing a Siyum Masechet. We learn some Torah and we finish learning a Masechet of Gemara or a large whole section of Mishnayot or Tanakh. And then we invite other people and do a Siyum. Many synagogues do that. You could probably even, if you can't get to synagogue because of the virus, you could fulfill that online. But the truth of the matter is that most women, in fact, across the board, women don't fast for the fast of the firstborn, even though there is a great discussion about it, which we're not going to get into. But practical halacha today is that it's usually only the firstborn men. But so if your husband, brother, or sons are the firstborn and they can't get to synagogue, if they could listen to a siyum online or live, that would also help them. That's going to be on Thursday. All right. Next, Thursday night is going to be Bidikat Chametz. We normally do checking for Chametz, Bidikat Chametz, on the night before Seder night. But Seder night is going to be Saturday night, but we're not going to do Bidikat Chametz on Friday night because it's Shabbos. So we're going to do Bidikat Chametz on Thursday night. We're going to say the bracha. We're going to search the whole house. We're going to use the candle or the flashlight on your phone. Either one is good. And you're going to do the whole thing. After the searching, we're going to say the kol chamira, the nullification at the end of the search. And we're going to put any chametz that we found or that's left over that we want to save for Shabbat in a special corner, in a box. In my house, it's on the balcony. Some people have a little corner of the storage unit. Wherever you're going to put all your chametz away, the whole house is going to be kosher LePesach. Thursday evening, bidikat chametz. Friday, even though it's really not Erev Pesach, we're going to pretend it's Erev Pesach for the point of view of burning the chametz. In a regular year, we burn the chametz early in the morning. In Israel time, it's going to be sometime before 11:30 in the morning. And we burn the chametz that we found in our search in the night. This year, we're obviously not going to do that on Shabbos. We can't have a fire and burn it on Shabbos. We're going to do that on Friday. And even though from the letter of the law, we could actually probably even do it all day, we don't want to get confused with other years. We're going to do it by 11:30. So the chametz that you found in your search, take out 11:30, burn it. If in your neighborhood there's no fires and you can't burn it, make sure you remove it from your own ownership. That is, it should be taken outside your house, outside to a public area, or totally nullified. You can flush it down the toilet, could pour floor cleaning liquid onto it. But you have to get rid of your chametz on Friday, preferably in the morning, in Israel time by 11:30. You're allowed to keep any chametz you're going to eat for Shabbos. And I'll talk about that in a minute, about what we're going to do on Shabbos. If you're actually getting rid of all your chametz then, and you're now going to go to a kosher Pesach diet completely, then we would say the nullification. But most of us are still going to eat chametz Friday night, maybe even Shabbos morning. We'll talk about that in a minute. So you're going to say the nullification on Shabbos morning, the kol chamira that we normally say again on the morning of nullifying the chametz. We're not going to say on Friday morning. We're going to say it on Shabbos morning. Okay, so now we have Shabbos. Yay! This is one of the greatest Shabboses of the year. My rabbi, when I learned in yeshiva, we learned Pesachim, when we talked about Pesach that falls on Saturday night, had this huge smile. He said, it's wonderful. There's nothing you can do to prepare for Seder except rest and learn Torah. And that's what we're going to do. We're all going to get to Seder night well rested and well learned, because on Shabbos, you can't do anything to prepare for Seder. So that means you want to make some of the preparations on Friday. You want to clean and grate the maror. If you're grating them raw, then you should put it in an airtight container so it doesn't lose its spiciness. If you're using the chrein, the chazeret, some people wait until Saturday night because you can grate it on Yom Tov. Then you have to grate it with a little bit of a difference than the normal way. But I advise grating it on Friday and putting it in an airtight container in the fridge. It'll still burn your sinuses out and you'll fulfill the mitzvah fine. In Israel, we actually use romaine lettuce, and that obviously needs to be checked for bugs. We're going to wash it, dry it, and put it in the fridge also on Friday. Before we light Shabbos candles, we're going to prepare a 24-hour candle so that we have a flame with which to light our Yom Tov candles on Motzi Shabbos, because we're going to go straight from Shabbat into Yom Tov, and we're not going to be able to light a flame. So we're going to prepare a long Yom Tov candle. I'm also going to prepare all the matzahs and all the wine, the charoset, the burnt egg, the shankbone, the zroa, the whole Seder plate. It's all going to be prepared. Everything's going to be ready for Seder. We're going to have all the food cooked. Theoretically, you could wait till Saturday night to bake matzahs, but you would have to have nerves of steel and to be much more organized than I am. I've heard of a great Hasidic Rebbe who does that on Saturday night. He goes and bakes matzahs before he sits down to his Seder night. We're going to be regular Jews. We're going to buy our matzahs before. We're going to make sure that we've checked them and they're all ready to go on Friday. Everything's going to be ready. Okay, so now we've got everything we can have ready on Friday. We're going to bring Shabbos in. We're going to have a normal Friday night davening. Here's the big question. What are we going to eat on Shabbos? The question, what are we going to eat, was always the question that I asked standing in front of the fridge on a regular year, Erev Pesach. Do you know that stage? Like, don't touch that, that's for Seder night. You can't eat matzah, but you can't eat chametz, and there's nothing left to eat. So we've got a whole Shabbos like that now. So let's talk about 4 different types of food, and then we'll talk practically about how to eat on this Shabbos. The first food I want to talk about is chametz. There's a time limit for chametz. You must finish your chametz by what's called the 4th hour of Saturday morning. And that is the end of the 4th hour, the beginning of the beginning of the 5th hour. And that is around 10 o'clock in Israel time. If you look at your calendars in your location, I'm sure it's well advertised there, last time for eating chametz. So if we choose to eat chametz on this Friday night or Shabbos morning, we must make sure that we finish eating all chametz by the last time for eating chametz. In Israel, it's sometime a little bit after 10 o'clock in the morning. Okay, that's the first thing with chametz. Next thing, what about matzah? Can we eat matzah? So many of us know that we have a custom not to eat matzah from Rosh Chodesh, from today. That's a custom. But from the law, there's a limit to eating matzah before Pesach also. Our sages tell us that someone who eats matzah on Erev Pesach is, and I apologize for the parable, I didn't make it up, the rabbis made it up. It's similar to a chosen, a groom who has relations with his betrothed on the day before his wedding in their parent-in-law's house, which is the wrong thing to do, right? You should have just waited another few hours to the chuppah. So the rabbis see eating matzah before Pesach, on the day before Pesach, as problematic. Now, there's a big argument about exactly when does that take force. Major normative halacha says that a person's allowed to eat matzah on Friday night. They just have to refrain from matzah from Saturday morning until Seder night on Motzei Shabbos. That's mainstream. There are people who are strict who say not to eat it already from Friday night. And there are people who are lenient and say you can even eat matzah perhaps until that 10 o'clock period of time. We're going to try and say the mainstream. If a person needs to eat matzah, they could eat it Friday night, but they should try not to eat it on Saturday morning. But let me tell you, here in Israel, Baruch Hashem, they kosher all the army bases. My son is now serving in the Israeli army. The good Lord should protect and guard all our boys in the army. And he's going to be koshering a base. They're not going to let anyone have any chametz in the army for several days, perhaps a week or two beforehand. The hospitals, they kosher them for Pesach. Hotels, they kosher them for Pesach. They don't let you take chametz in. So you're not really going to have much choice. To have a Shabbos meal, you're going to have to use matzah. In such a case, you're allowed to rely on the lenient opinion and use matzah, both for your Friday night meal and for your Saturday morning meal. You just must make it early, before 10 o'clock in the morning. You could use matzah. But that is only if the situation really requires it. There's no other way to kosher a hotel, a hospital, an army base. In your own home, where you have the choice, you should probably not eat matzah on Saturday morning until Seder night. So that's our first thing. We've talked about chametz. We talked about matzah. There are two other types of food that we might want to, before we leave matzah, let me just add to that. This is a tricky one that many people don't know. Not only can I not eat matzah on Saturday morning until, I can't eat matzah that's been crushed and then baked again, or crushed and not baked. So if you made those beautiful chocolate matzah crumb balls, do you have those ones? They're really yummy. You take matzah crumbs, all the crumbs of the matzah, and you wrap them up with cocoa and you mix them with that. And I don't need to give the whole recipe, but it's really yummy. You can't eat those on Saturday because they're matzah. Not only that, if you put matzah meal, in your cooking and you bake it, you can't eat it on Shabbos morning. So when you cook for Shabbos, you have to make sure not to cook with matzah meal. You have to make sure not to cook with matzah meal. If you're going to bake, okay, now can you hear me again? We're good? Okay. Next thing. The next thing is matzah.
Can I ask one question? What you said right now, in the morning, assuming we're having bread in the morning, is there a problem to eat it outside and then go back inside? And
I'll get to it in a minute. I'll get good question, Rabbanim. We'll get to the 1 second. Let's go. Okay, the next food that I want to talk about is matzah ashira. Matzah ashira is called rich matzah. It is where instead of using water and flour, they make matzah with wine and flour, or eggs and flour. Ashkenazim don't eat that on Pesach unless there's a medical reason. Sephardim eat it, many of them, not all of them. They eat it, but the Ashkenazim don't eat it. Can the Ashkenazim use it on Erev Pesach? So mainstream opinion says yes, we can certainly eat it on Friday night. And mainstream normally halakha says that we can even eat it in the morning up till 10 o'clock in the morning. And some rabbis even allow you to eat it until way in the afternoon. So that's an option. We could use matzah ashira. You would have to buy it specially, kosher LaPesach. Sometimes they call it egg matzahs. And you buy them kosher LaPesach. You cannot use them to do the mitzvah of matzah on Seder night. And Ashkenazim don't eat them on Pesach at all, but we can keep them in our house. So you could buy those and use those for Friday night or Shabbos morning. The last thing I want to talk about is boiled matzah. Boiled matzah is permitted. It's got a time limit too. You can't eat it too late in the afternoon. At around 10 to 4 Israeli time, you have to stop eating any grain products so that you're hungry for matzah in the night. But until 10 to 4 in the afternoon, mainstream opinion says you can eat boiled matzah. And that's why we can eat kanedalach. Yes, we can have kanedalach on Friday night and Shabbos morning. That's not considered matzah that's forbidden because it's not baked. Boiled matzah, you can eat until around 10 to 4 in the afternoon. So you could actually boil up your matzot. Rav Avadia Yosef of blessed memory gives a great practical advice of actually how to do it. He says, make your soup for Shabbos in a nice big wide soup pot, and then take it off the fire. And while it's still hot, put in the pieces of matzah and let them soak in there until it gets cold. And then carefully take each one out and then lay them out to dry on Friday. And then you'll have boiled matzah. Boiled matzah you could use on Friday night, Shabbos morning, and even later in the day until around 10 to 4 in the afternoon. So with all that details that I just said, let's talk practical, tachlis. How are we going to do Friday night dinner? Here are one option. This is what I'm going to do. We are going to make the whole house kosher to Pesach. We're cooking food for Shabbos without baking matzah meal or having raw crumbed or matzah meal. We'll probably have boiled matzah meal because, hey, we're Ashkenazim and Kanedalach, that's what we do. But we're going to have everything kosher to Pesach. I'm going to make kiddush. Then we're going to clear the table. And then I know it's not so good for the environment, but one time a year, I'm going to spread out one of those disposable plastic tablecloths. I apologize. And we're going to wash, and we're going to say hamotzi on pita bread. I'm going to give everyone about half a pita bread, and we're going to eat it raw. I mean, not raw, it's baked pita bread, but with no spreads, no nothing. We're just going to sit there. And then when we finished it, we're going to shake ourselves off and then we're going to wrap up that tablecloth. We're going to take it out to the public garbage bin, not the one in my house, because it's still mine then. I'm going to take it out to the public garbage bin and put it in the public garbage bin. We're going to come back. We're going to reset the table with the kosher the Pesach dishes, and we're going to eat the rest of our meal kosher the Pesach. Now, there's another way you could do that. You could make kiddush and actually move to another corner of the room and then eat your bread there. You could even move directly out the door if the door was open and you could see one place from the other. So if you've got a balcony there or a little porch and you're scared stiff of having any bread in your house, especially if at the time you made kiddush, you intended to eat right out there directly on the porch and you can see it from where you made kiddush, that would also be okay. But then you come back and you have your whole meal. That's one option for Friday night. Another option for Friday night is to use matzah ashira, the egg matzahs, the rich matzahs that we talked about. You can even have that, even if you're Ashkenazi, on your Pesach plates. You want to, when you're finished with them on Shabbos, put them at the back of the cupboard if you're Ashkenazi, so you don't make a mistake and eat them on Pesach, but it's okay. Next option, you could use boiled matzahs. You could put your matzahs in the soup on Friday morning, hang them out to dry. I mean, I don't think you actually hang them, but I just meant like lay them out to dry. And then on Friday night, you wash and you'll have chicken soup flavor matzahs, right? You could do that. That's also an option. So we've or if you really need to, you could use regular matzah, especially if you're in a hotel or a hospital or in the army or an institution where they're not going to let you have anything else. You could use real matzahs. What are you going to do Shabbos morning? Shabbos morning, we're all going to daven really early because we need to finish any chametz, and according to many opinions, either matzah ashira, by the last time for eating chametz, which is in Israel is around 10 o'clock in the morning. So we're going to be davening very early. And then we have the options again. You can make kiddush and then have 2 pita breads. Everyone should eat around half a pita bread. Clear off the table, get rid of the chametz, and then have your meal. Or you could use matzah ashira again. If you absolutely must, you could use regular matzahs, but it would be much better to use boiled matzahs. You're not allowed to boil them up on Shabbos. Then, at the 5th hour, that is before around 11:30, I have the time here in Israel, before 11:30, 11:28 or something here in Jerusalem, you need to actually get rid of any chametz that's left. You didn't finish the pita bread, go to the bathroom, flush it down the toilet. You need to get rid of any crumbs. And at that point, you say the nullification, kol chamira v'chamira, the ika b'rishuti, any chametz that's left in my house, we all say that declaration together. and then we're finished with chametz. What are we going to do for Sudah Shlishit? Well, the people who are really serious are going to break up their morning meal that's going to be before 10 o'clock. They're going to make kiddush and wash at 9, have that pita, bench, go for a little walk, come back, wash again for Sudah Shlishit. Wow. And eat again. But that's an extra chumrah. If you see people doing it, it's wonderful, but you're not obligated to do that. You can have your regular meal at 8, 9 in the morning, as long as you did it before 10 in Jerusalem time. And then Sudah Shlishit, if you do it before 10 to 4 in the afternoon, you could have boiled matzahs. Some rabbis say you're allowed even to use matzah ashira then. Rav Feinstein didn't like that, using matzah ashira after 10 in the morning, but some people say you could use matzah ashira. And bottom line, the truth is that the Ramah in the Shulchan Aruch says that Sudah Shlishit will do without bread. We'll eat cheese and yogurts and fruits and vegetables, but we won't wash for that meal. And that's an option also. Okay, so there we go. We've talked about what to eat. The day goes on. What do you do in the afternoon? The afternoon you rest. You can't set the table. You can't wash the dishes. You can't put out the Seder plate. You can rest and look at the Haggadah. Some people have the custom of even reading the beginning of the Haggadah up to Dayenu. Some people read the laws of how to bring Korban Pesach. My advice is to have a wonderful Shabbos rest. It's a big mitzvah. You shouldn't say out loud, you must go to sleep so you can stay awake tonight. But you can say, wouldn't it be great to go to sleep in order to honor the Holy Sabbath? Even if you know that you just want to stay awake. That's also okay. Okay, when Shabbos goes out, in Jerusalem it's around 7:30, you say, Baruch Hamavdil Ben Kodesh LeKodesh. It's a great line. Blessed are you, God, who separates between the holy and the holy. In Mariv, we add a special Havdalah, Todienu, that separates between the holy and the holy. When you're davening Mariv for Yontif, remember the bit on Saturday night, add the following. Only after we've said that can we start setting the table, can we start preparing the Seder. Yes? Then, during Seder, we want to make sure that we make Havdalah in Kiddush. It's a very special Kiddush in Havdalah. It's called the Yaknahaz. All the little writing in the Haggadah that says, if Seder night falls out on Saturday night, say the following. We're not going to say the blessing on spices, because when we move from Shabbos to the weekday, our souls fall down so much they need to be reawoken with spices. But when we go from Shabbos to Yom Tov, it's okay. But we do need to say a blessing on the candle. Don't light a Havdalah candle, because even though you're allowed to light a Havdalah candle, you're not allowed to put it out. So you'll end up standing there with this Havdalah candle until you sing Hadgadyar and it burns itself out, which is really annoying. So we're going to say Havdalah. Most people will say it on the Yom Tov candles that were lit. You'll light the Yom Tov candles, and then you'll look at the Yom Tov candles, even without pushing them together, just looking at the two Yom Tov candles. During Kiddush, you can say Havdalah, Borei Morei Ha'esh, on the Yom Tov candles. Okay, so that's all the laws. I hope I explained that well. Let me look at some of the questions. I got asked a question here. If you have a minhag of not eating matzah from Purim, or some people from Rosh Chodesh, can you still eat matzah ashira on Shabbos? 100%. The minhag not to eat matzah, first of all, would be overridden by the need to have a Shabbos meal, because that's just a custom. And the idea of having a Shabbos meal is an obligation. And no one took upon themselves the custom of not eating matzah for 2 weeks or a month before Pesach with the idea that that would stop them doing mitzvot. If we'd asked you, why do you keep that custom? You would have said, so matzah will be special. And if I would have said, would that stop you doing a mitzvah? You would have said, oh, no, I didn't mean to take that custom on. And it certainly doesn't apply to matzah ashira, which has a different taste to it. Okay. If we eat matzah ashira, do we do mizonot? Yeah, matzah ashira sometimes is, what bracha do we say on matzah ashira? There's a difference between Sfarim and Ashkenazim on this. Ashkenazim, if it looks like matzah and it tastes like matzah, you say hamotzi. The Sfarim, they're a bit stricter, and they say if it's made with, because it's made with wine and fruit juice, you should say mezonot on it. But they have a way out too. If they fix their meal on it and they eat enough of it, a whole meal's worth, that is, a Sephardi person would have to eat a large piece of the matzah, they too could say hamotzi on it if they fix their meal on the matzah ashira. And because it's a Shabbos meal and you are fixing your meal on it, even the Sephardim are allowed to say hamotzi on it. Some of them are very strict and eat a whole lot of it, but from the letter of the law, if you're fixing your meal on it, you're okay. Okay, do we have any other questions? If there are, you can send them in. If not, I'll just keep going. I want to talk about how much we need to eat and drink on Seder night. I know this is a very big question. Many of you have probably been at Seders where people seem to eat an awful lot of matzah and drink an awful lot of wine, right? How much do you really need to eat? And how much do you need to drink? Well, when it comes to drinking, every person at the Seder needs to have their own cup, and it's different than a regular Shabbos. On a regular Shabbos, the person making Kiddush has to have a Kiddush cup and drink, and really, everyone else doesn't have to. We like to drink Kiddush because it shows that we love the mitzvah, but we're not really obligated. If the head of the household or someone made Kiddush for us, it covers everyone. But on Seder night, the halacha is everyone needs a cup and everyone needs to drink. So there are two factors here. One is you need a cup that is of a minimum size. That size is called a revi'it. There's a big argument about how that big is. A major opinion is that it's 86 milliliters. The Chazon Ish and Rav Moshe Feinstein both had bigger measures, but a person who holds an 86 milliliter cup would be fine. The small plastic disposable cups in Israel, a regular plastic drinking cup, is 180 milliliters, right? A disposable coffee cup is like 200 milliliters. So you need a cup that's only got 86 in it. The second thing is, though, that whatever cup you have, it has to be completely full. So everyone needs a cup. I need to fill it up. How much do you need to drink of that cup? So it's preferable to drink a whole cup, but if you can't, you can get away with the majority of a cup, which is going to be more than half your mouth, right? A whole cheek's full. The question is, what's considered a cup? Is the cup considered the physical cup you have in front of you? If you have a nice wine cup, a standard wine cup is 200 milliliters. That's a lot. If you have to drink the whole 200 milliliters, or even the majority of that, 100 milliliters, 4 times in the night, you're going to have a wonderfully happy Seder. Some people say it's not the physical cup inside you, it's the halachic cup, the 86 milliliters, that ideally you should drink the 86 milliliters, and if you can't, the majority of that, a good 50 milliliters of it or so. So here's how we'd say, how much do you have to drink? Leaning to the left 4 times. If you can, you should drink the whole physical cup inside in front of you. If not, at least half the physical cup inside in front of you. If you can't do that, the next options are you should drink at least a whole revi'it. And if you can't do that, at least a good more than half a revi'it, which is going to be as much as fits into your whole cheekful, about half a mouthful. So that's when it comes to drinking. Rav Moshe Feinstein was very big in America, also Rav Kotler. They said that you should drink that have an alcohol content in them. Rav Henkin Zatzal also held that it should have some alcohol in it. But many great rabbis in Israel say that you can use grape juice even with no alcohol content. And a person obviously who has problems with alcohol should go for the grape juice. You have on who to rely just to drink grape juice. Now, how much matzah do we need to eat? Well, we need to eat matzah 3 different times. We need to eat it after we say hamotzi lechem min ha'aretz va'al achilat matzah at the beginning of the meal. We need to eat it again for the korech hillel sandwich. We need to eat it the 3rd time for afikomen. I know this comes as a shock to some people. Afikomen is not just finding it and getting a bicycle. It's actually, you're supposed to eat that matzah at the end too. Now, obviously, the matzahs that the head of the household says the blessing on and hands around, and the afikomen that you found and you passed around are not going to be big enough for everyone to eat their measure. So we're going to add to it from the pile of matzot in the middle of the table. How much do you need to eat? Preferably, when you start the meal, you should eat 2 kazetim, one from the upper matzah and one from the middle matzah. Many rabbis question that, and they say it's enough to eat 1 kazayit. And really, from the letter of the law, 1 kazayit would probably be enough. A person who wants to follow what's written in the Shulchan Aruch will eat 2 kazetim. How big is a kazayit of matzah? There are huge arguments about this. The word kazayit means an olive. There were great rabbis in Israel, the Avnei Nezer and others, who said that's actually, you take a piece of matzah that's the size of an olive. Look at your local olives, and that's the medium olive's worth. We have to remember that matzah is thin and only 2 dimensionals, and olives are 3 dimensionals, but it's still not a lot of matzah. But mainstream practice is not like that. For all types of historical reasons, we today define a kazayit of matzah as more than the size of our olives. I'm not going to get into the whole historical background, but I'll tell you that if you can, it's good to measure a kazayit at somewhere around 1/3 of a piece of machine matzah. In which case, it'd be very good at the beginning of the meal to eat 2/3 of a piece of matzah. For the korek sandwich, to eat 1/3 of the matzah. And for afikomen, you're really only obligated to eat 1/3 of a matzah, 1 kazayit. But many rabbis say it's good to eat 2, one in memory of the Pesach offering that was eaten at the end of the meal, and one in memory of the matzah that was eaten with it. But from the letter of the law, it's enough to have 1/3. But if you can do 2/3, it'd be good. However, all that is only for people who are, Baruch Hashem, healthy and feeling good, and that you've got an appetite, and it's not going to make you ill, and you don't have any problem with your teeth or your tummy. But anyone who has trouble doing that, no one should make themselves sick or ill eating matzah. It's a wonderful mitzvah. We should only do it with the greatest pleasure. If you really ask me how big a kazayit is, I really believe a kazayit is much closer to 1/5 or 1/6 of a piece of machine matzah. And if you really need to, you could eat 1/6 of a piece of matzah at the beginning of the Seder, a 1/6 for the Hillel sandwich, and 1/6 of a matzah for the afikomen. That is 3/6 of matzah. That would be altogether half a piece of machine matzah in the whole evening. Again, I want to stress that anyone who can should go for the way bigger measure. It's one of the only mitzvot we have from the Torah today that tells us to eat a specific food. It's a wonderful, wonderful mitzvah. So we should go for it, should enjoy it. But a person who has real trouble doing that, no one should make themselves sick, like I said, and you can go for the very smallest measures. Okay. So we talked about the measures. When we come to maror, the bitter herbs, a person also needs a measure of that. If you're still doing what I did when I was a little boy, which was that we used just the white grain. I'll just mention that the grain that you get to put on the gefilte fish that comes in the bottle is not in the jar, is not acceptable because it's been soaked, and soaked vegetables are not okay for the mitzvah. If you're just using the raw root, you're going to have trouble eating a whole measure of it. And if you're afraid that you're not eating the measure, you should probably listen to the blessing from your teenage son or grandson there who can eat fire live and stop bullets with his teeth or something, and who's going to eat a whole lot of it, and say amen to his bracha, and then just eat as much as you can. In Israel, we use romaine lettuce. How much romaine lettuce do you need? Like the size of like one of the outer leaves of the romaine lettuce, right? If I just tell you a leaf, I don't mean the little ones right on the inside, but the ones on the first layer or two, that's about the size that is the measure for eating maror. And you need that measure also when you put another piece in for eating the Hillel sandwich. The first time we do it, we have to dip it in the charoset. But there you have to shake the charoset off. But when you come to eat it with the Hillel sandwich, there are three customs. One custom is not to dip with charoset at all for the Hillel sandwich. Does anyone have that custom? It's brought down in the Shulchan Aruch, but it's such a depressing custom. I don't know anyone who does it. The second custom is you dip the charoset in and you shake it off like you did the first time. But my custom, which has a sauce to it, is to actually spread the charoset on really thick for the Hillel sandwich. Is there anyone who does that with like dripping there with a really nice good layer? So that has a sauce also. I'm going to finish by telling you a story of my youth. When I was a young teenager and starting to learn all the laws inside, I corrected my family. In our family, my grandfather of blessed memory would wash for karpas, kadeh, chatz, after Kiddush, he would wash for karpas, but no one else did. My grandmother would bring a bowl to my grandfather, he would wash and no one else washed. And I, being a learned boy of 14, 15, corrected on my family and said that everyone had to wash. And that's really the standard practice. It was only years later in my rabbinic studies did I realize that my grandfather's custom was based on one of the Rishonim, on an early source that's quoted in the Beit Yosef. And even though it's not mainstream halacha, my grandfather probably didn't make it up. He probably saw that by his grandfather. At that point, it was too late. I'd convinced my whole family to change, and I couldn't convince them to change back. But I always felt sad that I'd lost my family customs. And on Seder night, if you do have family customs, you should grab them. You should savor them and should pass them on to your children and grandchildren, because that's what Seder is all about. We're doing the same Seder the Jewish people did when we left Egypt, and the same Seder we're going to do together with Eliyahu and Avi when we reach the absolute ultimate Geula, when we all find that great afikomen of Mashiach Tzidkenu. We should all merit to have a wonderful, wonderful Chag. You should all merit to find the afikomen and get a great prize for it. Have a Chag Sameach, ladies. Shalom uvracha.
Rav Sperling, there's another question I think that just came in.
What's the question here? Does spelt matzah count? Okay. Spelt matzah. The Shulchan Aruch says that there are 5 grains that you can use to make matzah out of, and he says the ideal is to use wheat. Anyone who can eat wheat matzah should eat wheat matzah. Someone who, for dietary reasons, cannot, and I know there are people who use oat matzah because they have problems with digesting other forms of matzah. If you can't use, for Seder night, you can't use wheat matzah, then certainly you can use spelt, oats, rye, and whatever the other one is. But if you can go for wheat matzah, you should. But if there are health reasons, then a person fulfills their obligation with spelt matzah. What's the source for spreading the charoset thick? Top, we'd have to open up the books and I'd show you inside, but there is such a source. You'll take my word on that inside. Yofi, a real pleasure. Everyone, someone's written here that we should have a Chag Kasher Sameach. My rabbi told me that we should always say it the other way. Thank you for the blessing. We should say it the other way around. I know you're going to have a kosher Pesach. I'm worried you're not going to have a happy one. So I'm going to give you a blessing. You should have a Chag Sameach.
Everyone just stick around. Rabbanit Navit's going to say a few words, please.
Oh, good. Shalom, Rabbanit.
Thank you so much. I feel much more relieved now going into this more complicated Pesach, knowing what we're doing. So thank you so much for that. I just wanted to, first of all, I'm Navit Tzaddik and I direct the online learning program that happens year long. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to invite everybody to continue to be part of this learning community and to briefly introduce the upcoming summer program and talk a little bit about the year-long program that we have. So starting with the year-long program, we have Rav Sperling's Halacha Shiur and Simi Peters, who gives a Nach Shiur, and they're both starting a new semester soon after Pesach, so welcome to join that. And just generally also we have classes in Halacha and Talmud on different levels, Midrash and Tanakh, and you're welcome to look up on nishmat.net to look up there what we have and also to contact the office for any further information or questions with that. Other than that, just want to talk about the Beit Midrash being very much Beit Midrash. We don't just like sit there and listen, sort of like we did today, but very much become active participants, really engage in the sources. We have special breakout rooms to learn Chavruta first before even going into the classes. And the upcoming summer program is, like Julie mentioned at the beginning, from the 4th into the 15th of July. We have different levels also with the summer program. So you're welcome to join us there also. All kinds of different, stay tuned for more information about it. Last thing I was gonna say is, and some people look like they've passed college more than just, a few years ago, but we have a post-college also program, Bezrat Hashem, reopening next year. So anyone who is relevant for or knows somebody might be relevant for, also please pass on information. And again, you're welcome to look us up online, nishmat.net, and to get any information about anything, always contact the office, Sipora. She's so efficient, organized, and explains everything. So you're welcome to contact us with any other questions. Thank you.
One other thing people asked about recordings. Yes, anyone who registered will be sending you recordings to all the shiurim today.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rev Sperling. That was wonderful.
Thank you, all of you.
Chag Sameach to everybody.
Chag Kasher Sameach, everyone.
Thank you. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Hey, Caroline.
Thank you. Chag Sameach. Pesach.
Chag Sameach v'kasher.